Can you just let me get comfy first? That time of year again where Storygraph and Goodreads are pretty much my biggest cheerleaders and telling me that I'm nearly there for my 2023 reading goal. And I am delusional enough to believe them. So way back in January, what feels like 10 million thousand years ago, I set myself the goal of reading 50 books this year. I managed like 40 something in 2022, so 50 seemed like a reasonable enough goal to me. I wanted to pick a number that made sure reading still felt enjoyable and wasn't gonna get turned into like some kind of chore that I would somehow manage to turn into like a perfectionist accomplishment task, like everything else that I have ever enjoyed and loved in this life. However, little did 2022 Lucy know that something else would be taking up pretty much all of her spare time this year. So my reading goal, even though it was a fairly reasonable one, did kind of fall to the wayside about halfway through this year. And like all perfectionists who just love to ruin everything for ourselves, I have felt really guilty about it. Hooray! But now that we've come to the end of the year and my deadlines are all done and dusted, I've definitely rediscovered over the last few weeks where reading fits naturally into my schedule. And also, I am planning on doing absolutely 100% categorically nothing over Christmas and betwixtmas. So that should technically mean a whole load of time to dive into some new books. So believe it or not, there is still a slim, next to impossible, but still a chance that I might actually hit my 2023 reading goal. Or maybe, more realistically, this is just all the proof I need that I am in fact completely delusional about what I can achieve in an impossibly short space of time. If I needed any more proof of that, here it is. So I'm currently on 44, maybe 45 by the time this video goes up, meaning I have about 10 days to read 5 books, which is a lot, I'll give you that. But I mean, it's not entirely impossible, right? I mean, I'm not a gambling girl, but I kind of like those odds. So with all that in the forefront of my mind, with the countdown officially on, I thought now was as good a time as any to give you a quick rundown, if I can keep these stacked, of my 10 before the end. These are the 10 books that I have penciled in for myself to be my final 10 books of 2023, which I know sounds completely insane and like I've lost the plot, but actually 3 of those I have already read already, so I'm going to give you a little mini review of how I got on with those. 1 of them I'm currently reading. 5 of those books I might be able to smash through over Christmas, and then that would take me over the line for my reading goal. And then I guess 1 of them, hopefully, might be my first read of 2024. And also, final detail, the cat has set up camp right behind me here. We're literally sharing a beanbag. Okay, number 1, first up, this is All Girls by Emily Layden. And this was actually a random library discovery, hence the stunning and gorgeous, super sexy, wipe clean plastic cover. I picked this up on a total whim. I went browsing for something to take on holiday, and this grabbed my eye as soon as I saw it, mainly because of the title. Because I went to an all-girls school, so anything, I mean, that explains a lot, doesn't it? But anything set in that scenario, in that environment, is something that I frankly have to read as soon as possible. I instantly get drawn to it. So this story is told from a variety of 9 different girls' perspectives who are all in the school together. And the way it's written, each chapter is told from a different girl's perspective, which I really loved. It's like experiencing little snapshots into the lives of 9 different teenage girls. So you're presented with a whole array of experiences of girlhood and coming of age. And I actually recommend approaching this one rather than like one overall story that kind of carries you through the whole way. It's actually more like reading a series of short stories which just have the same core running through them. Because all of these girls are handling what you would expect comes with teenage years and like being on the cusp of adulthood, various different issues, but they're all set against the same kind of like dark school politics, because a previous rape allegation in the school's history has kind of reared its head again and come back to the forefront of the school. And all the girls are kind of processing this news in different ways, and it features as a cross-section in each of their lives in different ways regarding their story. I loved every single one. I thought they were really interesting and really accurate to being a teenage girl. Some of them are kind of that like, ooh, painful nostalgia kind of feeling. They each confront a ton of different themes: mental health, sexuality, everything that comes with being a teenage girl and the like incomparable complexity of that era of life. And I really felt like I was reading an intimate, emotional, moving, very real feeling selection of kind of diary snapshots as a result. Any kind of like stories of girlhood set against the backdrop of an all-girls prep boarding school type scenario, I will simply ask no more questions. It'll be a 5 stars from me. I ate this up. 2, next is Girl in Pieces. This is by Kathleen Glasgow, and this has been on my TBR for ages. Strangely enough, I actually picked this up on a doorstep in Boston while we were on holiday. The owner of the apartment was doing like a books for free, please take these off my hands kind of setup, and come home with me it did. It's also got one of those really like satisfying floppy American covers as a result. Before I actually went into this, I didn't know a whole lot about it other than I had my suspicions it was going to be a pretty rough story just from like the vibe of the cover, the title, and one of the main themes in this one is self-harm. So huge trigger warning to this book. I'd have a big think about whether that's something you're going to feel comfortable reading about. It is very intense. It's a difficult read at times, and a lot of it I did find like quite shocking to like see in front of you on paper, so please do just keep that in mind. So the main character, Charlie, she's only 17, but she's already been through way more in her life than the average person goes through in an entire lifetime. The story starts, it's kind of like a little bit Girl Interrupted. It starts in a girl's psychiatric ward, and she's ended up there having already been homeless. But then the next chapter of her life begins when she heads out to Arizona to try and start all over again and put herself back together. So yeah, it's intense and it's emotional, and at times I did find this a pretty difficult kind of punch in the face kind of read. Something that I really liked about it was the kind of network of more background characters that are built around Charlie. I felt like they seemed like such a real community, and it was that kind of like character weaving that almost makes you forget that you're reading a story. It felt really real to me, and I also really like the writing style of this. It starts out as very kind of intense flashes, almost like snippets of a very personal, intimate diary. Very short chapters, you just get like a paragraph at a time on each page. But then as she kind of starts all over again and her journey starts all over again, it becomes a more kind of flowing, fully fleshed out story, which I thought was a really clever decision. I think often when the subject matter is something as bleak as this one, the sweet spot with a story like this is that real kind of like a rope of hope. Rope of hope that keeps you locked into the story, and rather than being despairing, you're really hoping and rooting for that character, and that was definitely weaved into this one. It's kind of like an author's gift to the reader when the character does make those softer, more gentle decisions for themselves. It's such a comforting feeling when you see them kind of start to turn it around for themselves. I really enjoyed this one. It's intense, but it really captured me, and I thought about it for days afterwards. Actually, these characters really stuck with me. Number 3, this is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I hope you came for variety today, because that is what I'm dishing out, folks. I'm sure you've heard of this one. I feel like this falls into the kind of like modern classic bracket these days. But despite being in that like super famous territory, it somehow evaded my attention for like 10 years. I'm not really sure how that's happened. But 2023 was the year that I found it in a charity shop for £2.49, and it was the year that I fell in love with the circus. This is the most magical story, and it's one of those books that you read that you're just like, how? How has someone painted this in their mind? The setup is so detailed that it's just like an extraordinary piece of work to me. I love getting immersed in a story like this, and it gave me a really weird feeling reading this one. It's so unique to me in the way that every single page has this kind of beautiful imagery and description woven into it. So beautiful, but it's also kind of like tinged with this real feeling of melancholy and sadness. I just thought it was a really interesting combination of feelings that came up while I was reading this one. And the prose is just so gorgeous and the descriptions are so rich and vivid. The concept itself was just really enticing to me. So one night a circus appears. It arrives without warning. It simply just appears in all of its black and white striped canvas tents. And when you visit the circus, you find that every single tent is filled with breathtaking wonders like nobody has ever seen before. But beneath that, there's this complex and otherworldly competition going on. It's taking place between two magicians who've basically been raised for this competitiveness since they were children. And as their story unfolds and the game must kind of play out between them, it wraps up everybody else who's involved in the circus's past, present, future. It's just a delicious kind of intertwining. Interestingly, I will say though, I started this in the summer. I got through kind of like the first third of it, and it really just did not capture my attention. I actually put it down and started something else instead, which is so unlike me. I'm really not a DNFer at all. But something compelled me to pick it up again a few weeks back, and I absolutely raced through it. Maybe just because the kind of like wintry, cozy vibe being surrounded by Christmas lights kind of matched the reading experience more than reading it in the height of summer. I think it's one of those where, like all good magical related stories, when you finish the last page of a story like this, it actually feels a little bit like mourning. Something in you is kind of mourning something so beautiful that you'll never get to experience for yourself unless you decide to dive back into the pages of the story. That's the only way that you'll ever get to experience it, and it's kind of like a weird mixture of feelings with a story this beautiful. So this is my current read, another bit of a twist in tone here. My roommate is a vampire, and the title just kind of stuck in my head, so when I saw it in person I was like, sure, why not? With a title like that, that sounds like a great time. And I haven't read anything of this kind of like rom-com-y genre for a really long time, and I like to pick up something like this every so often. I feel like they're kind of like a palate cleanser, and sometimes they're great and they really hit the spot, and sometimes it's like that bit in The Princess Diaries where she has that strange ice cream as her palate cleanser and she decides to like take a giant spoonful of it. Sometimes they're like that and you're like, oh lord, what have I done? So many regrets. But sometimes they just hit the spot. But so far so good. It is really, really silly, so you've got to be ready for it. But it's actually really funny. The character of the vampire, who obviously also happens to be extremely handsome and gorgeous, Frederick J. Fitzwilliam his name is, which is already hilarious. He's genuinely really funny. Like, I've been chuckling to myself under my breath while reading this one. And yes, I can definitely relate to a main character who falls in love with a handsome vampire who just happens to live in a beautiful brownstone apartment. Like, yes, I can relate to that. That is fully something that I would probably do. The main character, Cassie, she's a struggling artist. She's looking for somewhere new to live, and she spots a listing that seems way too good to be true, and the price is super low. So there must be a catch somewhere. And shortly after moving in, she discovers the reason that the apartment is such a bargain, and why this man sleeps all day and heads out all night, and why he talks and dresses like Mr. Darcy is because, hey, the guy loves a blood milkshake. It's very much insta love, so if that kind of thing annoys you, this might not be the one for you, but it's just like daft and cute and silly. I know some people don't enjoy stories like this, but I think the key to enjoying them is just like suspending all your disbelief, put your judgments to one side and just go into it ready to enjoy it and ready to have a good time. Right, the next two are my current library rentals, so I know I need to read these next so that I can get them back before their due date. I have Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. I know I'm really late to the party with this one. I feel like this was a popular book about 3 years ago. It's been on my list for ages, and for some reason, well, I was gonna say for some reason, I know the reason. I just have far too many books, and my TBR hops and changes around for reasons beyond my control. People bloody love this book, and I saw one review that described it as wonderfully disturbing. And if there is any combination of two words that are guaranteed to make me want to read a book, it's probably that one. So main character Irina, she is stuck in a rut. She obsessively takes explicit photographs of the average looking men she persuades to model for her, scouted from the streets of Newcastle. Placed on sabbatical from her dead-end bar job, she's offered an exhibition at a fashionable London gallery, promising to revive her career in the art world and offering an escape from her rut of drugs, alcohol and extreme cinema. A self-destructive tailspin centered around Irina's relationship with her obsessive best friend and a shy young man from her local supermarket who has attracted her attention. So this one is definitely something that's on the darker side of fiction, but it's one that's really intrigued me for quite a long time now, and I think I am going to be ready to really sink my teeth into a properly like nasty, controversial, complex kind of character, because nothing says Christmas like all of those words. Am I right, ladies? My other library book is Brutes by Diz Tate. Can we just take a moment for this cover? As soon as I saw this cover, it was a done deal. It is a stunning, gorgeous baby that is ethereal and misty and dark and haunting, and honestly, I'm already in. Consider me hooked just from this glowing skin in a portrait and this neon pink title. This is another girlhood kind of story, but with added cloying claustrophobia creepiness. And I've seen this compared quite a lot to The Virgin Suicides, which is absolutely one of my favorite things that I have read this year, so I've got really high hopes. In Falls Landing, Florida, a place built of theme parks, swampy lakes and scorched bougainvillea flowers, something sinister lurks in the deep. A gang of 13-year-old girls obsessively orbits around the local preacher's daughter, Sammy. She's mesmerizing, older and in love with Eddie, but suddenly Sammy goes missing. Watching from a distance, they edge ever closer to discovering a dark secret about their fame-hungry town and the cruel cost of a ticket out. Brutes is a novel about the seemingly unbreakable bond in the we of young friendship and the moment it is broken. Forever. Honestly, it sounds like someone has basically harvested all of my favourite buzz phrases from book reviews and chucked them in a blender together. So you could say I'm a little bit excited to read this one. Oh, and also, if you have read any of these and you have thoughts about them, spoiler free please, but please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what you thought of them. I'm gonna throw a classic in the mix now. Unfortunately, it's a classic covered in stickers, and when I tried to get one of these off another one the other day, it left residue behind. Curse the residue. Beneath the horrible stickers, this is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Don't ask me too much about why I decided it was time for me to reread this. It simply called out to me. I wish there was some kind of like deep and meaningful pull towards this plot, or like this is a classic that really means a lot to me. But basically it was 3 for £6 on classics in the works. I have vague recollections of studying this one while I was very depressed at university, therefore absorbed absolutely none of it or any of the interesting learning around it. So now I would like to kind of take it back for myself and reread it and hopefully enjoy it, because what I've learned over the years is that if there was anything I claimed to hate when I was 19, it's probably actually very good and I'll really enjoy it again now. I'm very much vice versa too. Anything that I was into or that I thought was good at that point is also categorically very bad. I remember absolutely nothing about this book other than the very famous first line. I remember having to write some kind of essay about it, and I seem to remember that Mrs. Dalloway is throwing a party of some variety, so good for her. Clarissa Dalloway, elegant and vivacious, is preparing for a party and remembering those she once loved. In another part of London, across the city, Septimus Warren Smith is suffering from shell shock and on the brink of madness. Smith's day interweaves with that of Clarissa and her friends, their lives converging as the party reaches its glittering climax. Virginia Woolf's masterly novel in which she perfected the interior monologue brings past, present and future together on one momentous day in June 1923. I think this was written, I want to say 1925. Pulling that from the back of my brain somewhere. The last classic I read was Rebecca. I read that around late summer, maybe like September time, I think. And spoiler alert for my best books of the year, which I will probably do in January, I think now. But spoiler alert, that is probably in my top 5. And I know this one is considered to be like innovative and timeless. And hey, we all love a very short book that makes you look like a smart person. Oh, hello, gorgeous new hardback. I am so excited to meet you. So this was the result of me having 10 minutes to spare while I was in the Piccadilly Circus area. I had literally 10 minutes before a meeting. And what does one do with a spare 10 minutes when you are in the vicinity of Piccadilly Circus? You head to Giant Waterstones, of course. This is Rouge by Nina Awad, who you might recognise as the author of Bunny, which was one of my favourite books of 2022. I think it made it into my top 5, actually. This sounds so good. So bloody good. I'm so excited for this one. First of all, a moment for the strange, mysterious, intriguing cover that, yes, is covered in the sticky fingerprints of many strangers. This is described as a horror-tinted gothic fairy tale. Give me a straw, I'm gonna drink that up. As long as she can remember, Belle has been insidiously obsessed with her skin and skincare videos. When her estranged mother Noelle mysteriously dies, Belle finds herself back in Southern California dealing with her mother's considerable debts and grappling with questions around her death. The stakes escalate when a strange woman in red appears at the funeral, offering a tantalizing clue about her mother's demise, followed by a cryptic video about a transformative spa experience. So unusual, very compelling. There, Belle discovers the frightening secret behind her and her mother's obsession with the mirror and the great shimmering depths and demons that lurk on the other side of the glass. Creepy, creepy. It's all about the dark side of the world of beauty, the ludicrous standards that we are all constantly battling to keep up with, the complicated relationship between mothers and daughters, all kind of spiced and mixed up with some dark humour. What a combo. Having loved Bunny so much, this to me just sounds equally as much of an entrancing, spooky, messed up, girly, weirdo of a little book. Those vibes to me, well, they're just gorgeous. So this is definitely up there with one of the ones that I'm most excited to read. So I don't actually have this one to show you. I haven't got around to picking this up yet. I know for sure that I want to read this, and I know that it inevitably won't be long until I can get my sticky little mitts on it. I'm actually trying a program of restraint and trying my best to wait to see if if there's any kind of like hardback sale at Waterstones between Christmas and New Year like they sometimes do. But next, I really want to read Orpheus Builds a Girl by Heather Parry. And it's strange because this has become one of those books to me. I don't know whether anyone else gets this sometimes, but you see like a reference or a tiny little review just in passing. You're just officially sold instantly and you make your decision then and there that you know you're going to read it. And I think with this one, I seem to remember it was a tweet. I don't know who by though, maybe like an author or a reviewer or someone. Honestly, there has never been anyone that is more easily influenced than me, I swear to God. It's actually laughable at this point how easy it is. So this one sounds really cool. This is actually based on a true story, a very kind of gruesome, grisly true story, which I feel like I've watched a YouTube video or maybe listened to a podcast about before. It's from the POV of a German doctor. It's kind of like written like his memoirs, I think. He emigrates to America and with him, he has this vision of a dark-haired beauty that's presented to him in a dream. And then this beautiful young woman is taken to him as a doctor while she's in the grips of a very, very serious illness, and he instantly decides to recognize her as this kind of beautiful dark-haired beauty of his dreams and decides that she is his promised bride that's come from his dreams. Despite his efforts though, the sickness takes hold and takes his beloved away from him, but he will not be kept from his destiny even by death. Yeah, we can see where this is going, can't we? I feel like this falls somewhere in a disturbing haze between like Frankenstein and Lolita, which when you think about it is a really horrifying combination. And I, for one, can't wait to read it. But I think part of what draws me to this story so much is that there is actually like a dual narrative and there is another voice in this story. That's Gabriella, and she will not let this version of events go unchallenged. From between the cracks in his story, Gabriella recounts her own memory of her sister, a fiery and difficult young woman, and the madman who robbed her from the grave. It sounds extremely creepy, gothic-y, obviously a very unreliable, villainous narrator, generally quite horrifying and twisted, something that you have to kind of psych yourself up to read a little bit, and I thoroughly look forward to creeping myself out and probably not being able to sleep as a result. And number 10, absolutely last but by no means least for my 10 before the end, this is The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer, which I think I am gonna save maybe as my last read of 2023. Or I think more realistically, maybe I am going to save this one to start the new year on a high, because honestly, I don't know who I think I am that I'm going to be able to get through all of these in the next 10 days. I am genuinely insane. And I am just so excited to read this one. First of all, the cover is stunning. Look at that typography, look at the colours, a mystical looking bookshelf, you say? Sign me the hell up, baby. One of the descriptions that I saw of this is Willy Wonka for book lovers. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Oh, and the main character is called Lucy. Like, truly, I think we're onto something special here, me, in this book. During a childhood marked by neglect and loneliness, Lucy Hart found solace in books, especially Jack Masterson's Clock Island series. Just when Lucy is about to give up, Jack Masterson announces he's finally written a new book. Even better, he's holding a contest at his home on the real Clock Island, and Lucy is one of the 4 lucky contestants chosen to compete to win the one and only copy. Can you actually imagine if an author did that you loved and you really wanted to read that book? You'd be so annoyed, wouldn't you? You'd be like, you're actually gonna make me move into your house and compete for your book. Who do you think you are, sir? She must contend with ruthless book collectors, wily opponents, and the distractingly handsome and grumpy Hugo Reese, the illustrator of the Clock Island books. Meanwhile, Jack, the mastermind Masterson, is plotting the ultimate twist ending that could change all their lives forever. Be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you might just get it. It sounds so fun. It actually really reminds me a little bit, that whole idea of like a challenge around a book, reminds me of one I read last year. Or was it this year? I think it was last year, called The Skeleton Key, I think, which was like a similar concept, slightly different, but of like a challenge being hidden in books and readers having to compete for it. Anyway, I thought that was a really cool concept too. It's an exciting idea. It's really full of imagination, which is always something that really appeals to me. It's just generally quite full of like hope and whimsy, which happen to be 2 of my favourite qualities in the world, particularly when it comes to storytelling. So, on that note, can I manage to carry this stack for you? They are officially my 10 before the end. Well, 7 before the end, I guess, seeing as I've already read 3 of them. I have nearly finished the 4th one, so maybe 6 before the end. And to me, that sounds a whole lot more doable, so The race is on, my friends. See you all at the finish line, and maybe next year, let's maybe chill out slightly on the reading goals so that I can hopefully continue to enjoy my life's passion and not turn it into something that has to be accomplished and completed and obliterated at all costs. If I could just chill out, that would be great. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know if you have read any of these or if any of these are also on your TBR for the new year. Whatever you're getting up to over the festive season, I hope you have a wonderful one. And I think realistically, this is probably going to be my last video of 2023. I am very excited for next year. Trust me when I say there is something in the pipeline that I hope you're gonna be excited about. I guess we'll see, won't we? I guess we'll see. Don't say anything about the fact that you already know what it is. So thanks for sticking with me for another year. Here we are, still pals. Take care, stay cozy, look after yourself, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.